What's the difference between terrorism and domestic terrorism? How long will it be before "I know you are, but what am I" is considered valid political rhetoric? Can we please have a week without a mass shooting before the end of the year? For December 4th, 2015, from the stylish high-tech underground studios of Ribbit Media in hasn't had a mass shooting yet, Cranston, Rhode Island, this is NewsUndies. For December 4th, 2015, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. Our top news that shouldn't be news story this week is a pair of mass shootings, one in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at a Planned Parenthood clinic, which left 3 dead. The other is in San Bernardino, California, which left 14 dead. Make that 3. Savannah, Georgia. Swell. Robert Louis Deere, the suspect in the Colorado Springs shooting, was taken alive. His mugshot reminded me of Nick Nolte's 2002 arrest for DUI when it turned out that he had apparently eaten some GHB and decided to go out for a drive. Deere's remarks during and after the shooting suggest that he's high on something a little more pernicious, whose extreme effects can be hard to gauge until it's too late. Religion! The rate of gun ownership in the U.S. is about 1 gun per person. Of course, I don't own a gun, so someone else has the one allotted to me. With all of the guns around, it would seem, especially in places like Colorado Springs and San Bernardino, that at least one good guy with a gun had to be on hand, and yet, no. Gun violence appears to me to be kind of like fire. You know? You know the fire triangle? You know, you have 3 things. You have to have 3 things for fire to happen and continue: fuel, oxygen, and heat. Now, for gun violence, it seems like you need people, guns, and emotion. Now, with a fire, if you remove one of the 3 components, the fire goes out. The same appears to happen with gun violence. If people had guns but no emotion, from whence comes violence? If there were no people, guns would be inert and harmless. People with emotion but no guns may still be violent, but not with the kind of deadly, non-self-endangering efficiency we've seen in 355 different occasions this year alone. We can't eliminate the people. Or can we? No. And we can't do away with the emotion. So, in principle, getting guns under control is the only option. The time has more than come, I think, to publicly identify the NRA as a terrorist organization whose members, and those who may not be official members but clearly embody the core rhetoric of the NRA, have caused more deaths and destruction to actual Americans and their property on actual American soil than, arguably, any other group since its founding in 1871. And speaking of just desserts for assholes, a campaign in Brazil, going under the name Virtual Racism, Real Consequences, is using geotagging on racist comments found on social media to publicly display these comments near the place where the user posted the comment, often on billboards or bus stops. The names and profile pictures are pixelated out, but apparently people are beginning to see their own comments and feeling kind of shitty about it. Well, good. So, if you're at a truck stop and you see a truckload of live pigs, probably headed for the slaughterhouse, Truck's parked there, and the pigs are apparently hot and miserable. What do? Well, if you're a 48-year-old vegan activist Anita Krajnik, you try to give the pigs some water through the little ventilation holes on the side of the truck. What she viewed as compassion, the courts may rule to be criminal mischief, which could land her in jail for 10 years. Awesome. This is the first and will probably be the last thing I say about Fallout 4. And in squirrel news, Norwalk, Connecticut City Hall Holiday Tree is experiencing on a grand scale what cat-owning Christmas celebrants and owners of hand-me-down Christmas lights have dealt with since the time recounted in the classic movie A Christmas Story, finding the fault in a wonky set of lights. Norwalk's problem appears to stem from squirrels finding the tree to be a wonderful vacation spot and either taking the lights to be a tasty treat or the wiring to be an irritating obstruction. In either case, the squirrels are apparently gnawing through the wires and sending the lights to an early end around the bottom of the tree. The Norwalk Parks and Recreation Department is considering using pepper spray to ward off the wayward squirrels. Failing that, they will attempt to trap the animals and relocate them. As we know, outwitting squirrels is a fool's errand. The answer's not in the box, it's in the band. Up next, that deer in the headlights look. Directing the attention of a senator, and all the stupid we has.
It can be hard to think rationally when a loved one passes away. This can be especially true in the event of untimely death or when religious or cultural traditions demand quick interment of remains. Blue and Flatley Funeral Homes are here to ensure your needs are served in the most efficient and profitable way possible. At Blue and Flatley Funeral Homes, your money is very important to us, and we want to make sure we do everything you can afford to put your mind at ease. Blue and Flatley, profiting from the misery of others since 1883.
Joshua Fierstein. So by now, unless you live under Iraq, you know that last Friday, Robert Louis Deere allegedly went into the Planned Parenthood office in Colorado Springs and shot the place up, killing 3 people. Deere, according to authorities, was born in South Carolina and spent most of his life in the Carolinas, a part of the country well known as a hotbed of Christian conservative extremism. Deere himself, by many accounts, including that of one of his 3 ex-wives, was controlling, abusive, hot-tempered, and convinced that his supposed salvation through Jesus Christ would earn him forgiveness for anything that he did in this life. According to a Slate article linked below, the Carolinas seem not just to be a region with favorable conditions for such attitudes and beliefs, but where these are actually cultivated. And as if that wasn't bad enough, conservative Christian rhetoric from celebrities, clergy, and politicians alike is just as corrosive, if not more so, given the influence these elevated personalities can have on commoners like you and me. Right up until news of Deere's activities began to break, the likes of Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and Carly Fiorina have railed against Planned Parenthood as though, because of its iconic status as a nationwide provider of, among a wide variety of women's health services, abortions, wiping out Planned Parenthood would wipe out the availability of abortion. And then there's the king of shameless, empty-headed, religious, right-wingtip media whores, Joshua Fierstein. Back in July of this year, Fierstein whose best ideas apparently come to him when other people are driving him around or when he's in bed, posted a video wherein he said, Planned Parenthood was hunting down millions and millions of little innocent babies, stuck a knife into the uterus, cut them, pulled them out, crushed their skull with forceps, ripped their body apart, sold their tissues, and threw them bleeding into a trash bin. I say tonight, we punish Planned Parenthood. I think it's time that abortion doctors should have to run and hide and be afraid for their life. Fierstein has since pulled that video and now claims that that clip is heavily edited. No, it's not. You can see for yourself. Links below. It is excerpted from a video in which he was talking about that poor dentist who shot Cecil the Lion and trying to put the outrage expressed over that case into context against his view of abortion. Well, Josh, the comment I just quoted appears to be complete in your video with no interstitial edits. It stands on its own, as far as I can tell, as an incitement to violence. And as if that wasn't enough, Fox News host Andrea Tantaros had the audacity to blast liberals on Monday for, as she put it, indicting an entire religion of Christian white Republicans following the Planned Parenthood shooting. Now, I don't know if you've been following all of the talk surrounding the exodus of refugees from the civil war in Syria, but Fox News and the redder end of the GOP spectrum in general seems to have taken a pretty firm stand that indicts an entire religion, Muslims, and has basically said that we should just turn them away. But if we are going to accept these refugees, we need to strip them like Devereaux's Lincoln before we let them on American soil. You could fit a pretty big hippo in that crate. Republican U.S. Senator from Utah, Orrin Hatch, has stated in an editorial in the Washington Times that the idea that the Constitution creates a wall of separation between church and state traces back to Thomas Jefferson, and generations have been led to believe that his view reflected the dominant attitude of the founders toward religion in public life. But Jefferson's position as embodied in the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which he wrote, was in fact a novel approach that represented a decidedly minority viewpoint in the early republic. What I think the Mormon gentleman from Utah fails to appreciate is that while Mr. Jefferson's approach may have been novel, it was certainly proved to be the most objectively supportable, fair, and minimally invasive to private practice of whatever magic space underwear cult which you happen to believe in, opposed to, say, the Church of England in England, which is the official religion, and as long as it is, Club Kolob is never going to get the kind of official respect that the Bishop of Canterbury and his pals get. Also, the Mormon gentleman from Utah hauls out John Adams as an advocate for Christian piety and virtue, failing to recall that it was John Adams who signed the Treaty of Tripoli in 1796, which in Article 11 states, "The government of the United States of America is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion." And lest the good senator forget that this treaty was ratified unanimously by the U.S. Congress the following summer. And let the good senator consider, while he sips his morning postum, that just because a view is dominant, that does not necessarily mean that it comports with facts of reality. I might direct the good senator's attention to the Platonic view of gravity, the Pythagoreans' perfect solids, Ptolemaic cosmology, astrology, the usage of leeches to treat everything, the ancient Greek and Roman gods, the phlogiston theory of combustion, the luminiferous ether. Need I go on? Contrary to popular opinion, Senator Hatch, you were not there to confer with the Founding Fathers as to what their intent was, nor were you there to see Joseph Smith being run out of Palmyra, New York, as a common fraud. For a moment, Senator, let us consider the arguments on their own merits, and without the baggage that one's own religious leanings might bring along. Let us consider that you are aged some 81 years, and it's time for you to get the fuck out of the way! You're slowing the rest of us down! It's hard to be sure without making everyone sit down and take a test, but it seems like America's getting stupider. Is they? Here are Pig and Sheep with their thoughts.
I think it's perfectly fine that the Klamath County, Oregon Sheriff refuses to enforce his state's unconstitutional Oregon Firearms Safety Act, and that refusal to enforce allowed a convicted felon, Stephen Ray Sorensen, to get a hold of an AK-47 and shoot up a house full of kids. And that dancing traffic cop in Providence, Rhode Island, why, he's right on the money calling Black Lives Matter protesters racist. It's not like John DePietro is a troll or an inflamer of right-wing paranoia. Why, he's just a decent American telling it like the voices in his head tell him it is. And that's almost as American as Jesus. From the insensitive and poorly considered analogies of Laura Ingraham to Donald Trump demanding $5 million to appear on CNN's next Republican debate, to Ted Cruz's avalanche of stupidity, including such gems as his baseless claim that the overwhelming majority of violent criminals are Democrats, and his insult me to my face remark in response to President Obama making some frank and uncharitable comments about Cruz, we definitely appear to be sliding into an abyss of simplistic mentality devoid of subtlety, untempered paranoia, unabashed greed, and a total absence of self-reflection. We used to be a nation that profited from invention and innovation. Now we use accounting tricks and layoffs to show some appearance of growth, whatever that is.
Mark. Well, that's what Pig and Sheep think. What are your thoughts? Email them to ovcomments@newsundies.com. You'd be surprised what I'd believe about these people. Still to come, so close you could lick the end zone. Saints preserved by us. And Copper, I hardly know her.
Soot. You've been hearing a lot of not-so-nice things about soot. Mostly from tree-hugging, dirt-worshipping pansy liberals and people who think breathing is important. They will talk the ears off your head, droning on and on about wind and solar and renewable energy. What they don't tell you is that soot built America. Our modern post-industrial society owes everything to soot. If it wasn't for coal-fired power and diesel-powered transportation, America would grind to a halt. That's a fact. And as long as we have anything to say about it, and as long as there's profit to be made in government subsidies on soot, we're going to do everything we can to keep it that way. We're America's soot industry. Profitable, ugly, traditional, American.
And now, here's Moose Weintraub with the Sports Half Minute.
Moose Weintraub Sports Half Minute. It's a whole half minute of sports. 30 seconds of sports. Moose Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
This is your Sports Half Minute. I'm Moose Weintraub. Tim Tebow's girlfriend dumps him over his abstinence pledge. Ha! Welcome to reality, Tim.
Moose Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
Thanks, Moose. Always a great report from Moose. While the Pope was busy finger-wagging about denying climate change and saying condoms are not permissible as a way to stop the transmission of HIV, his publicity crew was ramping up a 54-city tour for Maria Goretti. Never heard of her? Not terribly surprising. She's the patron saint of victims of rape, crime victims, teenage girls, modern youth, and children of Mary. Whatever that means. How do you get to be the patron saint of rape victims? Really? Really, all you need to know is that she was stabbed 14 times when she fought off a rape attempt and died of her injuries in 1902. Pope Pius XII canonized her as a saint in 1950. So it wasn't really her on tour so much as her bones, encased in a wax statue, laying in a glass coffin, hauled from town to town in a special white big rig. Creepy. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? The fine folks who market the so-called Tommy Copper line of copper-infused compression garments have been found to have bilked, swindled, and bullshitted their way to monetary gain, and the Federal Trade Commission has finally taken notice. A fine of $1.35 million is being levied, but if the company turns out to have misrepresented their financial condition, which, considering the bullshit they've been shoveling at people in chronic pain for the last 4 years, I can't imagine they're completely upfront with the FTC, then their fine will balloon up to nearly $87 million. Whee! And while we're chasing snake oil salesmen, how about we hop across the pond and slap a $500 million suit on that stalwart warren of French woo wizards, homeopathic juggernaut, Boiron Laboratories. Well, that's all for this edition of NewsUndies. If you see news that shouldn't be news, you can submit your story tips online at newsundies.com or on Twitter with the hashtag NUSTip. NewsUndies is a weekly show. We'll be back on Friday, December 11th with fresh undies. If you like this video, please like this video. If you like the show, please spread the word. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, circle us on Google+, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, ignore us on MySpace. Tell your friends, and buy NewsUndies Kitsch at newsundies.com. Thanks for watching. For all of us here at NewsUndies, until next time, I'm Paul Torville. After that, I might be quitting drinking amphetamines and sniffing glue. Of course, those things are hard to quit. Especially if you haven't started yet. I just want to tell you good luck. We're all counting on you.